I went ahead and arranged my seed according to whether it likes the sun or can tolerate some shade or even prefers a little bit of shade. So the seed that likes the sunny areas obviously will be in the front of the hugelkultur berms on the south side, and on the north side we'll plant the plants that can tolerate or prefer a little bit of shade. And the other thing I did was I arranged them based on what's going to go on top versus what's going to go on the bottom. So the plants that prefer conditions a little bit drier are going to go on the top, and the plants that prefer a little bit moister conditions will go towards the bottom. So on the sunny side, what we've got, starting from the top down, we're going to be using white yarrow, cilantro, beach plum, common apple, European plum, golden currant, fennel, and I think that is Roman chamomile, and then parsley. So parsley is going to be at the bottom where it's the most moist, and the white yarrow will be at the top where it's the most dry. And those are all going to be on the sunny side. Now on the shady side, starting from the top down, we're going to go with chicory, hazelnut, purple cone flower, sea berry, serviceberry, red mulberry, Bartlett pear, and wild lupine. I'm also going to mix on both of them. I'm going to mix just a little bit of Dutch white clover as a living mulch. Although I don't want to do too much because I don't want it to take over. Another thing I'm adding is some hardy kiwi, which is going to go sort of on the edge of the far end of the hugelkultur berms, right near the fence. Because what I'd like to have happen is have that kiwi grow up on the fence. So I'm not going to do sepulcher style, or where you see a lot of guys that they just kind of mix the seed and then throw them out and let Mother Nature sort of sort it out. I'm actually going to plant them individually. It's going to take a little bit more, but because we have a lot of different sized seeds, I want to make sure the depth is right so I get optimal germination as opposed to just throwing it out and then only one type of seed germinates. So this is the south side of the hugelkultur berms. And on the very, very top, I planted yarrow, white yarrow. And the yarrow seed is really, really small. So I pretty much just broadcast it by hand right on the surface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up covering that with the mulch. But for the most part, the soil's loose. Rain will come down and hit it, and we'll punch that into the soil deep enough that it can germinate. The yarrow seed's real small, so it doesn't need to be planted. And then below the yarrow seed, I put in cilantro. And cilantro is a little bit bigger seed, so I actually made a little furrow about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch deep, and put the cilantro in there, and then covered it up with a little bit of the compost. And then below that, I planted in apple seeds, and then also beach plum. And I'm working on plum seeds now underneath that, and they're a pretty big seed. I mean, this is you can see this, but this is the plum seed. It's a pretty large, fairly large seed. And what I did for the apple and the beach plum is I actually made little terraces, because this is the seed. This is high value seed, and I want to try to get as much of the stuff to germinate as possible. And I realize also that I'm overplanting with apples and plums and beach plums and sea berry and all this perennial fruit that's going to be, if everything germinates, it's way more than these beds are going to be able to hold. But I'll keep the large trees pruned, and I'll thin out the weakest. So having an abundance and an overplanting of these perennials, I think, is a good problem to have. It's much easier to thin than to come in later and try to add. So basically, in order to help these plums to germinate, and I did the same thing with the apples and all the perennial fruit that I'm putting in here, is I went ahead and made like a little terrace. I've got this terrace here. That way when the water comes off of it, it'll sit. It'll help these seeds to germinate. And I went ahead and just pushed that in about 1 inch deep. And that's good to go. So then we just have to cover it with a mulch, and that should be pretty good growing conditions. One of the issues with hugelkultur beds are that if you've got steep slopes here, like I do, it's at least I've had difficult time getting good germination on the slopes. It's just so steep, and it's just like trying to seed a steep hill and then wondering why nothing germinates on the slope. It's because you got to have some sort of mulch to hold it in place and to hold the water so the water doesn't just run off. Now, if you do a nice job like really irrigating your hugelkultur berms, then you might be able to get away with not using something like a seed mat like I'm using here. But even if, for example, my hugelkultur beds that I've got in the front of my property, they're probably only 3 feet tall, maybe even 2.5 feet tall, and I had trouble getting the sides to germinate really well, and it took me a while, and I was irrigating it, and I was using just a loose mulch, so it's not like I wasn't using mulch, but again, I had a lot of trouble getting germination. So on these, I'm going with a seed mat. So this is biodegradable, and it's just a covering that's gonna, I'm staking down with sod staples, and so I've got sod staples here, and what I'll do is as I'm rolling them out, I'll go ahead and staple down the top edge of the seed mat. I'm not super worried about this area on the bottom because I never have trouble getting germination down close to the bottom of the hugelkultur berms, but up top is where I usually have the most problems. So I'm going to put the seed mat relatively close to the top and spike it down as I go, and then once I'm all done here, I'll spike down the lower edge too, because what will happen is the wind will blow it up, and you might run into issues with the seed mat coming up. The hugelkultur beds have been seeded. I added the seed mat. I also added some leaf and bark mulch to the areas that I didn't have covered with the seed mat, just because initially the hugelkultur beds, until it's vegetated, it dries out so fast, and the compost that I put down, I just noticed that if I don't have a covering of some sort of woody mulch, that stuff dries out just way too quickly, and on a steep slope, it's even worse. So mulch, I think, is definitely key to the success of seeding your hugelkultur beds.